It's been 3 years since Joe Goldberg returned to the United States. Now, he's not hiding. He's in the spotlight, thanks to his powerful wife, Kate. As the CEO of the TR Lockwood Corporation, Kate is using her wealth to do good and reshape her legacy, with Joe, now dubbed Prince Charming, always by her side. Kate has even managed to bring Henry back into their custody after Joe's haunting decision to leave him behind. And though Joe's life seems picture-perfect, he's clearly struggling. He misses the darker version of himself and feels the pull of his old ways, even as he tries to resist. At their latest charity gala, Kate announces a major new initiative to help kids, pledging a large portion of Lockwood funds. But not everyone is thrilled, especially the board. Reagan, Kate's resentful half-sister and CFO, is furious. She expected to inherit the company. Her twin, Maddie, is bubbly, flirtatious, and seems indifferent to the drama. But Joe isn't fooled. Uncle Bob, the COO, and Kate's most loyal supporter, almost like a father to her. But Joe doesn't trust him. And then there's Teddy, Kate's fun, intelligent half-brother, who's both black and gay. Joe likes him, but suspects Kate hired him as a shield against accusations of racism and homophobia. Teddy serves as Kate's chief of staff and has her back completely. The night takes a turn when Teddy learns that Forbes is about to publish a damning expose on Kate, one that ties her to a cancer-causing pipeline. If it drops, Kate's reputation and Henry's future could all be destroyed. He's tried so hard to be good. But maybe, just maybe, it's time to go back to who he really is. Joe also finds out that after Mr. Mooney passed, Kate bought the building for Joe. He never actually opened it, and eventually agreed to put it back up for sale. He is paranoid as he thinks ghosts are following him, but by the window of the bookstore we see handprints. Might not be ghosts after all. The next morning, Joe tells Teddy that the story is real, and it could end everything. They agree that the source must be an insider. Since Kate is Teddy's only real supporter in the company, if she falls, he does too. Their first suspect is Reagan. She denies leaking the info. Joe watches her closely, and eventually decides she's not the mole. Suspect number 2, Maddie. Over drinks, she flirts and reveals her disdain for Kate's savior complex. When Joe defends Kate, Maddie hints that he's hiding who he really is, and that he wants more, or perhaps someone else, implying herself. While she goes to get drinks, Joe checks her phone, and boom. A group chat with Reagan and Bob, planning to oust Kate after the article goes live. Joe tells Kate, but she's furious he spied behind her back and insists she'll handle it herself. Joe is annoyed. He's trying to protect her, but she keeps shutting him out. That night, Joe kills Bob, and it's gruesome. Kate realizes he's not in bed, uses location tracking on his phone, and finds him mid-writing. Turns out he wasn't really killing Bob. It's a murder fantasy. She's horrified reading it. Not because he killed, but because he enjoyed the idea of it. She thought he only killed out of necessity, and now she's not sure she knows who he is anymore. She leaves, shaken. Joe, frustrated by her reaction, returns to the bookstore to stash the pages, only to discover he's not alone, and it's definitely not a ghost. He catches a girl named Bronte. She's been sneaking in to borrow books and always returns them. We quickly see Joe beginning to obsess over her the way he used to describe past love interests, but stops himself and insists it's not about her, just the place. She recognizes him as Prince Charming, but Joe lets her go, even giving her the book she came for. Kate confronts Bob. He admits to leaking the information, claiming Kate has lost the plot. When she says she'll survive the scandal, he brings up Reese Montrose, threatening her with more dirt. Out of options and desperate to protect her family, Kate tells Joe to handle it. Joe breaks into Bob's place while he sleeps. He wakes Bob up with music, then calmly and methodically strangles him with a rope. Afterwards, he sends an email from Bob's account, claiming Bob made up the story, regretted it, and took his own life. Before leaving, Joe notices a light on in the bookstore again. Bronte is back, this time planning to sleep there. They talk about books, and something in their conversation makes Joe decide he can't let go of Mooney's. He offers her a job, and she eagerly accepts. Back home, Joe tells Kate they're okay. She says, "I know," then adds that she loves him. That simple acceptance is exactly what Joe has been craving. In his mind, it's permission to fully be himself again. The episode ends with Joe unlocking the basement of the bookstore. He stands before the infamous glass cage and finally embraces who he is. Not the monster or the reformed man, but both. Joe Goldberg is back. Now that Joe has broken the seal with Bob, he finally feels like himself again. But Kate is uneasy. She urges him to burn his murder fiction, fearing it could be used against them. Joe agrees, but secretly keeps the pages. At the bookstore, Bronte returns and shares her usual sarcastic banter with Joe. He misreads it as flirting, proof he's fully back in old habits. When she mentions struggling with rent, Joe increases her pay so she won't have to crash at Mooney's or with her ex. She playfully mocks him for being a trophy husband but takes the money. But having someone else at Mooney's means questions, like what's behind the locked basement door. Bronte moves a shelf while cleaning, and Joe quickly lies, warning her not to go near it. Joe and Kate are called to Henry's school after Henry breaks Reagan's daughter Gretchen's nose. Reagan wastes no time calling the police. The school suspends Henry and warns that if Reagan presses charges, he could be expelled. When the principal asks if Henry has a history of violence, Joe is defensive, unwilling to let his son be labeled violent. While Joe's gone, Bronte picks the basement lock, but just as she opens it, Joe and Henry return. She quickly slams it shut and plays it cool. She chats with Henry, bonding over The Hobbit, and jokes that she likes bad boys, then shoots a look at Joe, sending him spiraling. Later, Henry admits he knows punching Gretchen was wrong. But Gretchen was telling everyone his mom is a murderer after hearing it from Reagan. Joe is furious, but promises to explain everything about love one day. Kate, desperate to smooth things over, invites Reagan to dinner. But it's no peace offering. Reagan arrives with Maddie for backup. Teddy joins to support Kate. Reagan demands Kate pay for Gretchen's nose job, move Henry to a different school, put him in therapy, and both Kate and Joe admit they've failed as parents. As if that wasn't enough, Reagan demands Kate step down as CEO, accusing her of using the company to prop up her image. Joe loses it, confronting Reagan for accusing Henry's mom of murder. But Reagan clarifies, she wasn't talking about love. She believes Kate killed Bob. Teddy tries to shut it down, saying he saw suicide footage and erased it. Reagan doesn't buy it. She recalls how their father's enemies always ended up dead, and how he praised Kate's killer instincts. She vows to expose Kate's secrets, warning she's coming for her job, her family, and her son. Henry overhears and storms in, throwing a knife at Reagan before Joe tosses them out of the house. Back at the bookstore, Bronte sneaks into the basement and finds the cage. Curious, she steps inside and takes photos, only for the door to lock behind her. No phone service. She's trapped. Kate spirals, convinced they're being punished for Bob. Joe suggests a solution: eliminate Reagan. But Kate shuts it down. She insists they'll do everything by the book: mediation, lawyers, therapy for Henry. She wants to raise their son with a clear conscience. This triggers Joe. He insists Henry doesn't need therapy, just love. The argument brings up Joe's traumatic childhood with his abusive father, intensifying his spiral. He checks his phone and sees alerts from the motion sensor in the cage. He finds Bronte inside. She claims she was photographing rare books to sell. She's deep in debt. She apologizes. Joe, instead of killing her, fires her and tells her to never come back. But before leaving, Bronte admits she read his writing, the ones he told Kate he got rid of. She thinks it's decent and says the protagonist lacks depth. What's he hiding from? She asks. The question sends Joe spiraling. He opens up about his abusive father and how no one really knows the real him. Bronte responds gently. It was nice to meet the real Joe. Meanwhile, Kate gives Teddy Bob's board seat. She asks about the CCTV footage he claimed to see. He confesses. He lied. Bronte's words echo in Joe's mind. Deep down, he fears that no one, especially his family, will accept the darkest parts of him. So under the guise of protecting them, he moves forward with a plan. Without telling Kate, he goes to abduct Reagan. He finds her with Harrison, role-playing in the office. Once Harrison steps away, Joe knocks her out and locks her in the cage. Later, Joe calls Bronte back. They apologize to each other, and he offers her the job again. She can even crash at his old apartment above the store. But things get tense when she admits she read Caging, Sherry and Carrie Conrad's book, detailing how love once trapped them in the cage. Joe smoothly lies. He tells her Mooney used to lock him in there as a kid, and he told Love about it. She used it on her victims. He also reassures Bronte that he has no romantic interest in her. She seems relieved. Back home, Joe finally tells Henry that while Love was sick, he isn't, and encourages him to give therapy a chance. Kate, moved by the moment, apologizes for her coldness the night before. They both agree Reagan needs to be stopped, but Kate insists it will be done legally. She regrets Bob's death, calling it a moment of weakness. Joe disagrees. He believes he only kills for the right reasons, and that scares her. Joe realizes she never truly saw him, and because of that, he can never tell her what he's done. Their moment is interrupted by a call. Reagan is pressing charges. Joe is confused. How did she break out of the cage? Joe races to the cage, only to discover his mistake. It's Maddie inside, not Reagan. She was having an affair with Harrison. Joe kidnapped the wrong twin. Joe Goldberg is stuck. Maddie's locked in the cage, and every plan he drafts ends in disaster. He can't kill her, not with Reagan already suspicious of Kate, and his options are drying up. Desperate, Joe takes a cue from Bronte's romance novels and tries a new tactic: seduction. He feigns jealousy over Maddie's interactions with Harrison, but Maddie immediately sees through the act and unravels his whole plan. At home, Joe's grip on his carefully constructed life is slipping. Henry now refuses to be picked up by him, confiding only in his therapist, George. Kate and Teddy discuss how to handle Reagan. Joe suggests manipulating Gretchen against her mother, but Kate is appalled. She doesn't trust Joe anymore and decides to solve the Reagan problem alone. Rejected, Joe recalls how judgmental Kate was when they first met. In the bookstore, Bronte notices Joe's unease and asks about his writing. Joe confesses he has writer's block. Bronte advises him not to overthink it, and in her whimsical way, pivots the convo to a romance book sale. To maintain appearances, Joe agrees to tag along. Before the sale, he rushes to see Maddie and demands dirt on Reagan to destroy her. Maddie calls his bluff, knowing that if Joe could kill her, he already would have. She then unveils her own dark past. She was kidnapped at 16, manipulated her captor into killing himself, and now controls Joe's actions because she needs insulin, which only he can provide. Annoyed, Joe leaves for the book sale with Bronte. Still suspicious, he watches her charm the bookseller and banter like a dream girl custom-built from his fantasies. When they joke about romance cliches, Bronte challenges him to reenact a classic hair flip, lip bite kiss move. He nearly caves, until he reminds himself she's his young employee. Teddy gives Kate the ultimate weapon against Reagan, proof of embezzlement. Kate is thrilled, but decides to keep it from Joe. Teddy even jokes about whether Joe might strangle Reagan. Does he know about Bob? Later, Joe brings Maddie her insulin, but refuses to hand it over. She mocks him, calling him Kate's loyal dog. Pushed too far, Joe finally snaps. He tells her most people who've seen this side of him are dead. He leaves without giving her the shot. Feeling reckless and rejected, he joins Bronte at a literary salon. But they are soon confronted by Bronte's ex Clayton, who shares an old writing piece of Bronte's to everyone at the literary salon. They laugh at her. When she confronts him about being a douche, in a petty move, he reveals Bronte's real identity to the audience: Louise Flannery, a dental hygienist and grifter who used to borrow money from him. Bronte flees in tears. Kate visits Reagan and discovers Harrison leaving, half-dressed, while Reagan sobs on the couch. Security found Harrison locked in a closet, and Maddie's phone was found at the office. Thanks to Joe's earlier kidnapping, Reagan figured it out. Maddie and Harrison had been having an affair for years. Now she believes Maddie is in hiding. In an unexpected turn, Reagan apologizes to Kate. Kate takes the opportunity to broker peace. Reagan will fix things with the school and drop the charges, or Kate will leak the affair. Reagan folds. Kate tells Joe everything, but he only fixates on the fact that Reagan hasn't dropped the Bob situation. Then he notices the stack of romance novels and finally has an idea. Now that the affair is known to the family, Joe offers Maddie and Harrison a way out: disappear together. But the news sends Maddie spiraling. She panics that Reagan will strip Harrison of his wealth and make them social outcasts. Then, in a devastating reveal, Maddie refers to Gretchen as her baby, explaining that Reagan forced her to be a surrogate and now controls access to the child. She sees her life as ruined and says death would be better. Feeling a twinge of guilt, Joe unlocks the cage and gives her the insulin shot. Later, Joe begins digging into Bronte's real identity and finds out she's read books by Beck and the Conrads. He grows paranoid. Was this all part of some plan? He checks on Bronte and finds her crying. She opens up. She feels like an imposter. Her mother was sick, and she took care of her for years. After her death, Louise wanted to escape her past and live in the moment. She admits she came here because of Beck, whose work she admired. Joe opens up that he and Beck dated, and he still thinks of her death as a tragedy. He even confesses he sometimes wishes he had killed Dr. Nikki to save her. Their conversation turns intimate when Bronte asks if Joe feels devoured at home, the way a person should in love. He admits he doesn't. As he leaves, Bronte tells him she doesn't want to be another poor girl in a rich guy's fantasy. She couldn't handle an affair. Her words hit deep, because she's just made Joe realize what his marriage is missing. That night, Joe writes out his fantasies about her and pleasures himself, before locking away the writing in shame. He cannot afford to mess up his family. Kate confesses she's haunted by the murder of Uncle Bob. She lies awake, trapped in her guilt, and can't understand why Joe seems fine. He reveals that this killing and protecting his family is his purpose. But Kate doesn't want that part of him. She refuses to let him keep murdering for her. He feels unseen and turns back to Bronte in his mind, someone who might appreciate him. Joe begins stalking Clayton online. Then, Reagan pulls a shocking move. She goes live from Maddie's social media, pretending to be her twin. She announces that she's ceding her board vote to Reagan, and the performance is so convincing that even Kate is fooled. It gives Joe an idea. He rushes to the cage and asks Maddie the ultimate question. Do you want to become Reagan? Joe is thinking about Bronte more than he should, but he knows he can't blow up his marriage for a fantasy, not when Henry is finally thriving with his therapist, George. Still, things at home are tense. Kate is distant, standing her ground. She plans to take down Reagan legally by firing her over embezzlement. Joe backs off. Her plan provides the perfect cover for his real scheme, a twin switch. Joe wants Maddie to impersonate her sister Reagan, just long enough to undo the damage Reagan caused, get Teddy installed on the board, and then resign. But Maddie, weighed down by years of being overshadowed, doesn't believe she can pull it off. Joe sweetens the deal. If she becomes Reagan, she can void the prenup and secure Harrison's future. They could be together, free. Bronte keeps nudging Joe out of his comfort zone. She's planning Mooney's grand reopening for the next night and senses something is off with him, since she mentioned the word affair. She quickly backtracks, assuring him they're nowhere near that territory. She's not a homewrecker. She's also excited about his next serial killer story, but when he hesitates, she steps back. What disturbs Joe is how deeply Bronte understands him. Kate's attempt to push Reagan out fails miserably. Reagan fights back, revealing that she found Uncle Bob's man in London, who confirmed that Kate framed Nadia for the murder of Reese Montrose. Digging deeper, Reagan discovered footage from the neighbor's CCTV. Joe was at Uncle Bob's house the night of his death. She suspects Joe killed Bob to cover up the secret. She's even having Bob's body exhumed. Reagan gives Kate a choice: resign quietly, or they both go to prison. Bronte shares her latest writing with Joe. It's about a girl being pursued by a man in a toxic, obsessive way, based on her ex. Joe's first reaction is rage. He wants to kill the guy. He backpedals, but Bronte doesn't mind. She says it feels good to punish abusers. She calls them chaotic good, helps others but breaks rules to do it, and explains the moral alignment meme. Joe latches onto that. Reagan, he realizes, is chaotic evil. He uses that to help Maddie get into character. He pretends to be Reagan, insulting and mocking her. He teaches her that Reagan uses her own pain to wound others. Maddie needs to weaponize her trauma too. But then Kate caves. She tells Joe she's resigning. He suggests murder. She refuses. She hates what they've become. She'll never be the damsel in a fantasy where he's both knight and killer. She sees him for what he is, a beast. Bronte, however, embraces that side of him from his writing, though it's not clear if she would accept him if she finds out he does those things for real. But we know Joe is Delulu, so Joe takes matters into his own hands. He goes after Reagan in disguise. But Reagan is tougher than he expected. She fights back, manages to rip off his mask, and realizes it's Joe. She assumes Kate sent him. He eventually knocks her out, but he knows he can't kill her. Not yet. Bronte stumbles upon Joe's writing. She's flustered about the things he's written about her. Joe locks Reagan in the cage with Maddie. He tells Maddie to kill her sister. That's the only way he can be sure she wouldn't spill. And if she doesn't, he'll kill both of them. Maddie hesitates. Then Reagan wakes up and laughs. She mocks Maddie, calls her the lesser twin. Loveless. Insignificant. She even says that during Maddie's difficult pregnancy, she would have chosen her daughter Gretchen over Maddie's life. Kate tells Teddy she's stepping down. She tries to act like Reagan has nothing to do with it, but Teddy doesn't buy it. He starts to suspect Kate is afraid of what Joe will do. At Mooney's opening night, Joe keeps locking eyes with Bronte. But things go south when her ex, Clayton, shows up. He grabs her arm, and Joe steps in, pinning him against a bookcase and demanding he leave. The threat works. Clayton backs off. Bronte steps outside for air. Joe follows, apologizing. She tells him he can't act like a protective partner when he still has a wife. Then she brings up the pages, calling them the most sensual, tender, complex, beautiful things someone could ever want written about themselves. She insists they can't have an affair. Joe agrees and walks away. He returns to the cage to find Maddie has killed Reagan with an insulin shot. The next day, Kate is ready to resign. But then Reagan walks in, really Maddie in disguise, and announces her resignation instead, passing Reagan's voting rights to herself and installing Teddy on the board. But Kate isn't fooled. She confronts Joe, not buying the story that he got Reagan to back off. Joe's frustrated. He saved everything. So why isn't she grateful? He says their marriage isn't just broken, it's dead. Bronte is packed up and ready to leave. But Joe finds her at the bookstore and stops her from walking out. He doesn't let her go. Instead, they kiss, and finally sleep together. The affair begins. Joe and Bronte take their growing chemistry from the bookstore to her apartment, where they discuss his book. Bronte glorifies his fictional serial killer, teasing him as the kind of messy man girls like. But Joe is conflicted. How much of his true self is safe to reveal? Fresh off their night together, Joe is flying high. Kate's growing distance doesn't bother him. He sees it as freedom. What he doesn't know is that Kate is more suspicious than ever. She secretly contacts the same private investigator who dug into Joe's past years ago, asking for the details that Cynthia, her fixer, had previously erased. Maddie is crumbling under the weight of pretending to be Reagan. She lashes out at Harrison and Gretchen, unable to maintain the performance. Reagan's ghost, both metaphorical and literal, haunts her. Back at Bronte's, Joe grows suspicious when she hides a phone call. Knowing that acts of service are her love language, he showers her with gifts, a grocery delivery, and an in-home massage. But Joe's efforts don't go unnoticed. Kate, tailing him, spots Bronte exiting her building, putting the puzzle pieces together. Kate vents to Teddy, revealing she knows Joe isn't who he says he is. She recalls how Joe once admitted to doing bad things in London, things she convinced herself were to protect others. She reveals Cynthia discovered Joe cheated on his last wife with a woman named Marianne Bellamy, who is now missing. Kate suspects Joe lied about Love Quinn's death too. She insists they must stay safe and let her handle it. Bronte seems to be warming up again, leaving Joe her latest writing to read. They close up early and return to her place. The sexual tension between them escalates. Bronte wants to be dominated, and Joe embraces the role. But then she suddenly says the stop word. Joe worries he pushed her too far, but gets distracted by frantic texts from Maddie. Maddie insists they need to fast-track their plan before Kate catches on. Also, this being mean is affecting her mentally. Joe urges her to hold out one more month, reassuring her that she's got this. When Joe returns to the bookstore, Bronte is gone, completely. All that's left is a note. Joe, I'm sorry. I'm leaving town. Thank you for everything. Bronte. Her apartment is empty, her phone disconnected. Joe spirals. He checks Clayton's social media and starts to suspect she ran off with him. He creates a fake publisher email to bait Clayton into responding and sets a trap. Wanting to maintain some illusion of control, Joe tries to slip back into normalcy, until Henry finds a knife under Kate's pillow. He confronts Kate, but she flips it on him. She accuses Joe of doing something to make Reagan quit. She calls out his lies, his affair, and his dark past. She knows about love. She knows about Bronte. True to form, Joe gaslights her, claiming she was fine with who he was when it suited her, and insists he's only ever done what he had to for love. Then he pushes it further. If she doesn't trust him, she should kill him. That's the final straw for Kate. Calmly, she tells Joe she wants a divorce. She suggests joint custody because she still loves Henry. But as for Joe, she's done. Joe doesn't argue. In fact, he's almost relieved that the charade is over. He storms out, heading to Mooney's to sleep, since his wife no longer feels safe with him in the house. Joe gets a response from Clayton. He's out of town, meaning Clayton's apartment is empty. Joe breaks in and finds signs of a sudden departure, and notices an empty gun case, now wondering if Bronte left with Clayton or was forced to. Out of nowhere, Bronte calls. She can't talk long, just needed to hear his voice. Joe's questions go unanswered before she hangs up. When he calls back, a diner employee picks up and gives him their location. Bronte and Clayton had been there and argued. They were headed to a beach house called the Sandbox. Joe drives there and begins snooping, only to get tased by Bronte. He wakes up to Bronte apologizing. She panicked. She confesses that her relationship with Joe got too real, so she ran away with Clayton, only to regret it. She hates being the side chick instead of the heroine in her fantasy. Joe tells her he's getting a divorce. What if she didn't have to be the other woman anymore? Kate visits Reagan, only to be met by Maddie, who makes weak excuses. When Kate won't leave, Maddie locks herself in the bathroom and slips into a mental spiral. The lines between Maddie and Reagan blur as she argues with herself in the mirror. When Kate breaks in, she finds only Maddie, who finally confesses, Reagan is dead. She killed her. Joe helped her see her trauma clearly by locking her in the cage. She begs Kate to forget this ever happened, but it's clear Kate won't let this go. Back at the beach house, Joe and Bronte sleep together again. Bronte finally lets go and embraces her desires. But peace is short-lived. Joe, getting dressed, hears a noise downstairs. Clayton is back, yelling at Bronte. Joe intervenes, and the two men fight. Joe snaps, choking Clayton and smashing his head against the fireplace, killing him instantly. Before Joe can process what he's done, two women burst into the house, one of them live-streaming the whole thing on TikTok. Bronte reappears, taser in hand. "We fucking got him, Louise," the woman filming says. Joe realizes too late. This was all a setup. Bronte catfished him. Years ago, Guinevere Beck rushes across campus to meet with a student, none other than a young Bronte. The two connect over writing, with Beck mentoring Bronte and offering warm encouragement. Bronte reveals she's leaving school to return to Ohio and care for her ailing mother. As a parting gift, Beck quotes Jane Eyre, unknowingly ceding Bronte's lifelong inspiration. Present day, Joe is booked and released, thanks to Kate's lawyers. But as he's signing his release forms, he spots Bronte entering the station for questioning, which causes him to question if anything he shared with her was ever real. The detective questions her motives for catfishing Joe Goldberg, and Bronte answers plainly, they did it for Beck, to finally get justice. Flashback to Ohio. After returning home from work and caring for her mother, Bronte sees Beck's murder reported on TV. The news shakes her. She reads Beck's posthumous autobiography, The Dark Face of Love, and immediately picks up on inconsistencies, references to things Beck didn't even like. Bronte begins investigating online, and soon connects with Clayton and the women we met at the beach house, Dom and Phoenix. It turns out Clayton is the son of Dr. Nicky, the man Joe framed for Beck's murder. Together, the group believes Joe ghostwrote Beck's book and was Dr. Nicky's anonymous therapy client at the time Beck died. Bronte tells the detective their mission was to expose Joe for the killer he really is. After Joe faked his death in California, their investigation stalled, until he re-emerged in New York as Kate's new partner. Seeing this as their shot, they began tailing him. Initially, Bronte was supposed to observe from afar, but frustrated by the lack of progress, she broke into the bookstore. That time Joe thought he was being haunted by ghosts. Then, again, when Joe caught her, it was completely unplanned. Shaken by the in-person encounter, Bronte realizes Joe likes her. Seizing the opportunity, she decides to get closer. She recalls user at Minty Fresh, aka Joe's ex, Karen Minty from season 1, talking about a cage, and she decides to look for it. She finds Joe's writing in the cage. She realizes Joe is a romantic who likes to see women he falls for as broken birds who need saving. To lure Joe in further, Bronte plays into his fantasies, becoming the woman who needs saving. Clayton plays the fake, toxic ex to heighten Joe's protector instincts. Bronte then feeds Joe her curated social media and links to Beck, drawing him deeper into their web. But things start going sideways. During a tender bedroom conversation, Joe opens up about Beck and how he wished he could have saved her. This moment sparks doubt in Bronte. She starts distancing herself from the mission, which frustrates Clayton. He crashes the bookstore opening and acts aggressively to provoke Joe. Joe reacts protectively, which only fuels Bronte's confusion. Was Clayton right about Joe, or is he really just misunderstood? The plan was for Bronte to confront Joe with evidence, with cameras at the beach house. But at the diner, right after she calls Joe to say goodbye, Bronte confesses to Dom that she wants out. Dom agrees to inform Clayton, though he's not going to be happy about it, and suggests they just enjoy the beach house weekend. Joe is back home. Kate is on a mission to get the viral beach house fight video removed. She lashes out at Joe for falling for a catfish, and then accuses him of Reagan's death. Joe turns it around, threatening that if he goes down, she's going with him. Joe realizes that Kate is speaking a bit too openly, and he realizes Henry is not in the home. As Joe loses his cool and tells her she'll never take Henry away from him, shouting that she's not even his mother, Kate reveals she already got a temporary custody order, snuck into the release forms he signed at the police station while distracted. When he lunges at her, Kate defends herself, and has security throw him out. Back at the police station, Bronte continues her statement. She explains that after tasing Joe at the beach house, she called Dom. Dom tells Bronte that Clayton made a post on Instagram that suggests Bronte ran away with him to purposely trigger a jealous reaction in Joe. Clayton hoped Joe would try to kill Bronte, proving their theory that he murders women who reject him. Bronte, however, never believed Joe would hurt her, but she also didn't expect Clayton's rage. We see the moment again. That night, when Clayton arrives to turn on the cameras, Bronte confronts him. She is upset that he would put her at risk, and calls him a murderer, like his father. He gets violent, mocking her for being obsessed with Beck. He pushes Bronte down and knocks over a lamp. Joe bursts in and kills Clayton during the altercation. Bronte tells the detective Clayton made her feel like her life was in danger, while Joe believed he was protecting her. When asked if she's calling it murder, Bronte instead labels it self-defense. Joe returns to Mooney's, vowing via inner monologue to stop Kate from taking Henry. Then he discovers a hidden camera placed by Bronte in one of the books on her shelf. Realizing that Bronte has been watching him, Joe stares directly into the lens and says, "Hi, Bronte. This is not over." Joe is spiraling, with headlines plastering his arrest everywhere. He's furious that Henry might grow up believing he's a monster. He blames Kate and Bronte for destroying his life, and vows that someone will pay. Joe's lawyer advises him to wait out the media storm before appealing the custody order. When Joe learns that Clayton was Dr. Nicky's son, he's stunned. but the lawyer believes self-defense can clear the murder charges, and all Joe has to do for custody is behave and win over the public. But patience isn't Joe's strong suit. Every moment he spends away from Henry, he believes Kate is turning his son against him. Kate faces pressure from all sides. Her lawyer Sloan urges her to publicly denounce Joe, while Teddy pushes her to go to the police. But Kate is walking a tightrope. She knows that if Joe goes down, he could take her with him for the murders of Reese and Bob, and for imprisoning Nadia. So instead, she plays it safe. Let Joe self-destruct. She has bigger problems now anyway. Maddie is unstable and got a place in the West Village that Joe doesn't know about. She wants Teddy to take Henry there and is begging for more time to deal with Joe on her own terms. And though he's frustrated, Teddy agrees, for Henry's sake. Dom and Phoenix are livid about Joe getting bail. But Bronte? She's starting to soften. She wants to make things right with Joe. When the vigilantes invite her to go live with all their evidence, she refuses. That sparks a blow-up when they discover Bronte is the reason Joe is out, because she said it's self-defense. Bronte defends Joe, even believing Kate's narrative that Love was the real villain and Joe the survivor. She explains her theory of self-defense, but Dom isn't buying it. Realizing Bronte has fallen for Joe, they kick her out. Maddie, now unraveling under the pressure of pretending to be Reagan, refuses rehab until Kate manipulates her with promises of her returning as Maddie. While she's in rehab, Kate promises to find a way to break Reagan's death to the world so she can reunite with Gretchen and Harrison as herself. Maddie finally agrees. Joe tries to see Henry at school. He's stopped, but he slips the principal a book with a tracker inside. He follows the signal to the West Village house. Knowing the guard's weak point, Joe texts him pretending to be his ex. While the man giggles over the messages, Joe sneaks in. Joe tries to appeal to Teddy's emotions, reminding him of his own abandonment, but Teddy isn't buying it. He grabs a knife, but Joe disarms him. Before things escalate, Henry appears. Joe tries to comfort him, but Lockwood security arrives and forcibly drags him away. Teddy has had enough. He tears into Kate, accusing her of prioritizing herself over Henry's safety and every other person Joe has killed. He doesn't want to be next, so he's leaving. To make things worse, Joe finds out he's gone viral. The vigilantes, Dom and Phoenix, have posted a bombshell video laying out their full case. They accuse Joe of killing Candace, Benji, Beck, and more. They invite others to stitch the video and share their experiences with Joe. And people do. Peach's friend Annika, Love's mother Dottie, even Beck's brother Clyde all join in. Even Paco, Joe's old neighbor, tries to defend him, reminding viewers how Joe helped his mom escape an abusive ex. But that backfires. People point out Ron's been missing since 2019. It looks bad. Ethan from Mooney's and the Conrads weigh in too. Joe is getting cancelled. Hard. This crash-out scene had me dying. Dude looked like he popped a vein. Then comes the blow that breaks him. His lawyer reveals that while the murder case may not stick, he's in serious danger of losing Henry forever. In desperation, Joe turns to blackmail. He threatens Maddie with the footage of her killing Reagan and demands help fixing his image. Maddie agrees, suggesting he recruit influencer Kim Kramer, known for calling out toxic men. She's built her brand with Lockwood backing. Getting her on Joe's side could destroy the vigilante movement. Bronte tries to visit Joe to apologize, but chickens out when she sees the interview with Kim starting at Mooney's. She watches from the shadows. Kim is ruthless, grilling Joe on everything. Joe owns up to the affair and admits Bronte is his biggest regret. That hits Bronte. She texts him and books a ticket to Ohio. Maddie urges Joe to open up about his childhood, about Mooney locking him in the cage. But it's too raw. Joe breaks down live on air, crying, panicking. Maddie panics too and signals Kim to pause the live stream. Joe gathers himself. Just then, Bronte's text lights up his phone. She told the police the truth. That Clayton's death was self-defense. Joe is stunned. She sees him. She believes him. His spark reignites. Invigorated, Joe redirects the interview to their love story. He admits to killing for Bronte but frames it as a protective act born out of love. The internet melts. Joe becomes the ideal boyfriend overnight. Kate is livid. She tells Henry they're leaving for London. Joe, riding the high, checks Bronte's social media only to find the dark side of the internet attacking her. They accuse her of manipulating Joe, of using him to kill. One man, Dane, finds her. When Joe arrives, Dane is already chloroforming her. Joe doesn't just stop him, he destroys him, smashing his head in. Meanwhile, in London, Kate visits Nadia in prison. "We're going to take him down," she says. Back in New York, happy Joe watches over Bronte. She's in his bed, unconscious, handcuffed. Joe opens with a monologue on love, how complicated, messy, and dangerous it can be. And now, more than ever, he needs to know. Does Bronte truly love him? Because if not, she's just another woman who ruined his life. When Bronte wakes up, terrified, Joe surprisingly sees her fear as fair. He uncuffs her. He wants the truth. Bronte spills everything, including the fact that she did change her mind about him. In London, Nadia wants absolutely nothing to do with Kate. After all, Kate and Joe are the reason she landed in prison. Nadia drops a bomb. Joe is the eat-the-rich killer. Yep, Kate's husband murdered all her friends. Maddie is watching Harrison interact gently with their daughter. The moment gets to her. She throws caution to the wind and tries to sleep with him. But in doing so, she lets her real self slip. Harrison realizes she's not Reagan and freaks out. He quickly deduces that something terrible has happened to the real Reagan. Joe and Bronte are still deep into their honesty session. He pushes her to reveal something real. Bronte confesses that she once wished for her mother to die, just to get it over with. In return, Joe confesses he wanted to kill Clayton for hurting her. She's understandably shaken, but also touched. No one's ever loved her enough to want to kill for her. Joe, overwhelmed, takes it as a sign of connection. Then comes the grand gesture. Joe shows her Dane locked in the cage. He's done hiding. He protects those he loves, and if Bronte dreams of taking down abusers, this is her chance. She's flustered, but before she can process it fully, Maddie keeps blowing up Joe's phone. She's knocked out Harrison and needs help. Annoyed, Joe gives Bronte the key to the cage. He says he'll respect whatever she decides to do. But it's a test, to see if she's like him. Kate brings in Phoebe to watch Henry. As she prepares to handle Joe, Kate breaks down. She tells Phoebe everything. Joe's killings, the signs she ignored. Phoebe comforts her. Joe arrives at Harrison's. He's ready to kill, but Maddie begs him to use his mind magic instead. She wants Harrison to join them, not die. Joe, feeling generous and romantic, agrees. Nadia is mid-transfer in London when, plot twist, the truck stops. She's shocked to see Kate got her secretly released. But Nadia isn't grateful. She's terrified of Joe and not ready to forgive Kate. Kate doesn't care about forgiveness. She just wants to destroy Joe. Things with Harrison spiral. He refuses to forgive murder, and Maddie snaps. She calls out his hypocrisy. He cheated on Reagan, stood by while Reagan bullied her, but murder is where he draws the line? It backfires as he spirals into guilt, saying he deserves to die. Joe is like, bet, and preps to kill him. But Maddie begs for a moment alone. Joe reluctantly agrees, giving her 15 minutes. Desperate, Maddie breaks down. She tells Harrison she can't survive the guilt without him. That Gretchen needs them both. Bronte chats with Dane in the cage. At first, he's smug, but they bond over their sick mothers. He almost talks his way out, until he says next time, he'll only target women who deserve it. That sets Bronte off. Lady Phoebe convinces Nadia to give Kate a chance. Kate, she says, is loyal to a fault, and she will protect her. Henry asks for Joe. Kate tells him gently that Joe might be gone for a long time. He doesn't like it. Later, he finds Phoebe's phone charging in his room and calls Joe, revealing that he's in London. Joe asks him to pass the phone to his mom. Joe loses it. Kate took his son out of the country. But Kate reminds him he signed over his rights. As he rants, she drops the hammer. He's going down for the eat-the-rich killings. And then she hangs up. Joe loses it. Knife in hand, he storms toward Harrison, only to find Harrison and Maddie kissing. To make it worse, he sees Bronte letting Dane go, and she's gone. Joe absolutely snaps. Why do those two idiots deserve love and I don't? He stabs the couch like a toddler mid-tantrum. Cracked me up, not gonna lie. He checks the security feed, and plot twist, Bronte didn't leave. He rushes home. She let Dane go, yes, but warned him. They're watching. Bronte then voluntarily locks herself in the cage, saying it forces the truth out of people. Joe asks if she loves him. She says yes. Even after he killed for her? She says sometimes, people have to take things into their own hands. She admits she knew he was testing her by handing over Dane's fate, but she needs her autonomy. She loves Joe, but he doesn't need to kill for her. Now it's his turn to enter the cage. Low-key thought she was gonna lock him in forever and do the world a favor. But nah, she just asks what he's holding back. Joe admits it. He enjoys killing to protect who he loves. That's who he is. She asks if he's ever killed anyone innocent, and he says no. Bronte connects it to his childhood. His mother abandoned him, so now he thinks he has to kill to earn love. But it's not true. She loves him, and she's not going anywhere. Joe breaks down. She lets him out. They hug. They sleep together. She jokes, "We've moved on from enemies to lovers to she can fix him." They laugh, believing maybe, just maybe, she has. Kate hands over everything to the authorities. Nadia agrees to testify. The lawyer says they have a strong case, but it could take years. Right then, Joe calls Kate, calmly asking for his son. He feels invincible. Kate threatens to tell Henry everything, but Joe fires back. Yes, he's killed, but never children. Then, bam. Joe kills Dane. Not to prove anything. Not for Bronte's love. Just out of gratitude. Because now, he knows she won't run. What the hell, Joe? I had so much hope in you. Kate realizes they can't wait years for justice. Her mind is made up. They have to kill him. Joe and Bronte are curled up on the bed, her writer's block finally lifted as she types away on her laptop. Joe is mesmerized. When he asks where she'd be if she could be anywhere else, she says, a castle. Joe, deep in love, starts envisioning a future outside New York, with Bronte, a castle, and Henry. He's so hopeful that he's planning to propose. Even his lawyer is optimistic they can reverse the custody ruling since Joe was tricked. But before he can truly move on, Joe needs to tie up loose ends. He plants Reagan's teeth in Harrison's possession, thinking he'll eventually break. Then, Joe sends an anonymous tip to the police, which results in Harrison and Maddie getting arrested. The plan works perfectly. Kate returns to New York to handle the fallout. Joe tracks her via her AirPods. But it's a setup. Kate and Nadia are waiting to kill him. Before they can act, the news of Maddie and Harrison's arrest breaks. Kate halts the plan. She insists Joe must first confess to Reagan's murder, so Maddie and Harrison can go free. Nadia warns that changing plans is exactly how Joe always escapes. Kate's plan? They'll make Joe confess by telling him it's his only way out. Out from where? We're left wondering. Meanwhile, Joe and Bronte are living their best life. She notices Joe's injured arm, but he brushes it off. She lands a publishing deal, thanks to Joe pulling strings, but she's thrilled. Dreaming of castles in Ireland, Joe even decides to buy her one. Bronte warns that Kate may have emptied his accounts, but Joe claims he has a separate one. When he checks, it's empty. Kate beat him to it. He tells Bronte about some emergency cash at Mooney's, but when they arrive, the place is locked with an eviction notice. Their upstairs room? Inaccessible. Furious, Joe believes Kate is trying to make him look unfit. No home, no money. The judge will never grant him custody. Joe snaps. It's time. Kate has to go. Kate steps down and appoints Teddy as CEO. He's stunned, but she assures him she loves him. As she exits, Joe follows her, but it's a decoy. He's drugged and wakes up in a cage, his own trap turned against him. Nadia and Kate stand on the other side, smug. The offer: confess to killing Reagan and Reese, and Kate will smuggle him to a country with no extradition. If not, they'll poison him with carbon monoxide. While they argue, Bronte sneaks in upstairs to grab her things. Kate confronts her and warns her about Joe. Bronte fires back, calling Kate a hypocrite who used Joe to kill Bob. Kate walks off, unfazed. Back in the basement, Joe and Nadia keep going at it. Joe's delusions frustrate Nadia. He still refuses to admit guilt. To shake him, she brings in Marianne. Joe lights up, but Marianne doesn't return the sentiment. She says he ruined her, and though he insists he saved her, she calls him the abuser. She's overprotective of her daughter now because she fears she'll meet someone like Joe. Her words make it clear. Joe is not getting out. Bronte, leaving, spots Marianne in the bookstore. Marianne tells her everything, and it mirrors Bronte's experience with Joe, how she thought he was a good man she could fix. This hits Bronte hard, and she runs. Downstairs, Kate tries to push Joe into confessing again. Nadia's done playing games. She wants to shoot him. Kate stops her. The plan was to stage a suicide, remember? Carbon monoxide. Marianne and Kate take Nadia upstairs to cool off, realizing they're at an impasse. As penance, Kate says she'll be the one to kill Joe. After all, she's a Lockwood. She has power and protection. But Joe has a secret weapon. That arm injury? It's where he hid a key to the cage. This guy is unhinged. He bites into the wound and extracts the key. When Kate returns, the cage is empty. He attacks, grabs Nadia's gun, and during the struggle, shoots Kate in the stomach. Maddie storms into the bookstore. Harrison took the fall for Reagan's murder, clearing her name, and now she's furious. She tells Teddy she's done. Joe sees Maddie and runs after her. She locks him in, enraged that he set them up. She douses the bookstore in alcohol. Joe begs, tells her Kate is bleeding, but Maddie doesn't listen. She sets the place ablaze and walks out. Joe rushes to find a way out, but Kate smacks him over the head. Now both injured, they accept their fate. He admits he killed her father. She says she knew, and he deserved it. She jokes about Joe's wives dying in fires, and he corrects her. He poisoned Love first. She's been recording the whole conversation and sends it to Nadia. Joe doesn't care. He's dying. Outside, Bronte realizes Marianne was right. She calls Dom and leaves a voicemail, apologizing and admitting she lost the plot. Just then, she sees smoke and runs into the burning store. She finds Kate unconscious and tries to save her. Joe assumes she's come to rescue him. To maintain her cover, she helps him out instead. Outside, Joe proposes. He doesn't want to wait any longer. Bronte, torn, says yes. But in her mind, she knows the truth. She can't run. Only she can take Joe down. Joe and Bronte are on the run, heading for Canada to lie low. Along the way, they stop to admire the beauty of nature. Bronte quietly fantasizes about killing him right there, but dismisses the thought. No one would know what he's done, and that's not the ending she wants. So she plays along, hiding a gun in her backpack. Joe has enlisted Will's help to secure fake passports and make contact with Henry, assuring the boy that he'll be back for him soon. But he's growing paranoid, especially with Nadia possibly holding on to his recorded confession about Love. At a gas station, Bronte goes inside, while Joe waits outside. She sees a women's protective tool on display and a copy of Beck's book, which shakes her. She contemplates telling a nearby police officer, but with Joe outside, she knows he'd flee before they could act. They end up squatting in an abandoned house while waiting for the passports. When she hesitates to kiss him, Joe senses it. Trying to keep up appearances, she kisses him passionately. But she knows he'll expect sex that night, and she can't pretend anymore. She decides to confront him before he catches on. Bronte sticks to the truth, admitting she's scared of everything happening. To reassure her, Joe takes her out on a boat ride. He has her stand while he lies down, staring up at her and the stars. He pours his heart out, telling her she's the center of his universe. Bronte feels a rush of power. This is why she fell for him. But now that the fog has lifted, she knows he can't manipulate her again. As they start to make out, she pulls the gun on him. She accuses him of stealing her voice and moral compass, just like he's done to every woman before her. As revenge, she forces him to redact his additions to Beck's book so it can be republished in her original voice. Joe, however, flips the narrative. He says Bronte knew the truth all along, but still chose him because she hated her real life as Louise. As Bronte, she had freedom, purpose, and fantasy, all thanks to him. Still, Joe thinks their love can be saved. He treats the gun pointing as just another romantic trope, misunderstood lovers in conflict. But the illusion shatters when Bronte lets Will connect Joe to Henry. The call isn't what Joe expected. Henry asks if he hurt Kate, and although Joe lies, Henry seems to know the truth. He recalls Joe checking for monsters under his bed, but now realizes the monster is Joe. He hangs up, devastated. Joe spirals, saying he deserves to die. But Bronte cuts through his pity party, calling him delusional. He's not the victim. She believes the world will eventually see the truth, just as she has. Joe snaps. He attacks Bronte and manages to get the gun from her. He shoots her. She runs and hides, eventually trying to call 911, but the phone won't work. As Joe searches, she escapes through the window and finally reaches 911, but drops the phone. Joe catches her and sneers, "You want to know how I killed Beck? I'll show you." He begins to strangle her, but she fights back using the protective tool she bought earlier. Joe stumbles and pushes her into the same lake they were playing love earlier. He strangles her, seemingly to death, but sirens wail. 911 has tracked the call. A police officer arrives while others search the area. Joe kills him and tries to flee, only to be confronted by Bronte, alive and armed. Surrounded, Joe begs her to kill him. She refuses. He attacks, and she shoots him, accidentally hitting him in the crotch. The cops swarm in. In the aftermath, Joe is convicted of multiple murders: Beck, Love, Benji, Peach, and more. His trial is public and messy. Dr. Nikki is finally cleared. The vigilante group gains fame, appearing on podcasts and advocating for justice. Nadia publishes a book and helps rehabilitate women with PTSD. Harrison is cleared. Maddie is tried for arson and Reagan's murder but avoids prison. She enters rehab, gets sober, and becomes pregnant with twins. Reagan receives a proper funeral. Kate survives the fire, albeit scarred. She regains custody of Henry. Teddy turns Lockwood Corp into a nonprofit. Kate returns to art and takes on Marianne, now a celebrated artist, as a client. Bronte worries about Henry, who seems disturbed by Kate's injuries, so there's hope he's not going to end up like his parents. Bronte republishes Beck's book without Joe's part. It becomes a huge hit. She may not know who she truly is yet, but she's on the path to finding out. Finally, in prison, Joe laments the worst thing about incarceration: loneliness. Not death, but never experiencing love again. He reads books and disturbing fan mail. Some believe him, others want him to do kinky things to them. Joe becomes bitter, convinced he's a product of his environment. Hurt people, he says. And in true Joe fashion, he ends his story believing that he was never the problem. Society was. What did you think of You finale? Drop your thoughts in the comments.